hip-hop and R&B, African, disco, oldies but goodies.
Hi, this is Janet Jackson.
We're bridging the gap. Seriously. Flash Radio 94.3 New Jersey.
Hey, did you see that post online about Julie? I totally wrote it. Wasn't it hilarious? Is all of that true? Who cares? She's done anyway. Are you talking about that post about Julie? Yeah, funny, right? No, but that post about you was. What post? Oh, you didn't hear? You're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, and oh yeah, you smell too. The whole school saw it. No big deal. That's so mean. Did they really write that about me? No, but how does it feel?
Sometimes you can feel all alone when being bullied, and that's when you can really use a friend. If you see someone or know someone that's being bullied online, let them know they're not alone. Stand up now, support a friend, and save a life. For more information on cyberbullying, visit stopthememe.wordpress.com or call the hotline at 1-800-555-STOP. A message from your friends here at Splash Radio.
The biggest outdoor water party to hit New Jersey, H2O and Soca, formerly known as PCW. Go to H2ONJ.eventbrite.com. H2O. Looking for trustworthy tax professionals? Give Impact Corp a call. We will assist you with all your tax needs. We are a team of CPAs and IRS enrolled agents. If you are audited, our audit represent you out-of-pocket costs. We provide 3 years audit protection and a year identity theft protection, so you can have peace of mind without fear of audit. Call our team of tax experts today, 973-395-4401.
Yo, this is Splash Radio and the #1 radio station in New Jersey. I order them.
Flash Radio 94.3. Reggae, dancehall, soca, hip-hop and R&B, Africa, oldies but goodies. Large applause, boy, Mr. Lover. Shug it. Yo, the best station on the planet. Flash Radio 94.3 New Jersey.
Well, I don't know if I represent for 94.3 Splash.
Hey, David. Let's go.
The music from them.
Check those headsets out.
Yeah. Your attention, please. This is no ordinary show. Covering news and information for Essex County, New Jersey, and beyond. This is the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Broadcasting from 94.3 Flash Radio. Now, here's your host, giving it to you like only he can. It's Eric Dawson.
Hey, this is Eric Dawson, and this is the Eric Dawson Radio Show, 94.3 FM. Call in number 973-457-8000 and 973-457-8000. Listening number is 213-493-0287. And if you are on Facebook, we're live on my Facebook page. I'm streaming live every day from 10 to noon. And we got 2 guests coming in today. I know today is Health and Wellness Wednesday, but in the political cycle, we sometimes have to, kind of move things around. And I was excited to have these 2 guests in, and hopefully we can learn a little bit more about them. The first one, you see him sitting to my left, is David D. Walsh, who announced that he's running, and announced pretty early too, that he's running for an at-large council seat in the city of Newark. And then the second guest that I have, who's going to call in around 10:30, and if David has time, he'll stay here with me, is Jack Ciattarelli, who is the Republican candidate who's running against the Lieutenant Governor for governor of the state of New Jersey. So welcome, David. How are you, man?
Very good. Thank you, Eric.
So listen, man, I saw, I was on Facebook, and just to be really candid about it, I saw your page that you were running for council, and when I saw it, the first thing that I saw was a white face.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm scratching my head, and I'm like, I don't know when the last time I saw a candidate running for any office in Newark, I mean, in my adult life, who wasn't either Hispanic or African American. So that was the first thing that I saw. And then I read your bio, and I saw some confessions in your bio, and then that gave me pause again. I said, you know what, I gotta inbox this guy or get in contact with him to get him on the show, to have him introduce himself and to talk about who you are, why exactly you're running, and what you believe you can offer to the residents of Newark.
Well, thank you. I want to first say thank you for inviting me, and I'm just so humbled to be able to be here on your show, and to be able to not only talk to you but your listeners too, to allow them to take their time out of their busy day to hear what I might have to offer them, mm-hmm. and how I can enrich Newark along with where it's going.
So let's talk a little bit about your background first.
Sure.
Right. So you talked about felonies, and you asked for forgiveness. You said you turned your life around. Just give people a little bit of insight about who you are.
Sure. My name's David D. Walsh, like Eric said, and I'll start back in high school, I guess. I dropped out of high school because of many different reasons, but one particular reason is because I didn't think I was smart. Mm-hmm. And that came from a teacher.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school at Boca Raton High School, which is in South Florida.
Okay.
So I went to high school there, dropped out, became an electrician, went to apprenticeship school for electrician for 4 years, mm-hmm. did that for about 8 years. And then in 2008, actually in 2005, I had my accident, where it was a DUI, vehicular manslaughter.
Okay.
So full disclosure, I have two felonies. Mm-hmm. One was grand theft auto when I was 18, and then the DUI, vehicular manslaughter, when I was 23 or 24. Went through that, went to prison, did my bid, came out, did probation, and had to figure out, what was I going to do? I had to restructure my life, which was probably one of the most difficult things I had ever done. So, make a long story short, restructured my life and decided, hey, Mom and Dad, what do you think about me going back to college? At this point, I'm 28, 29 years old. And my mom and dad looked at me and said, yeah, if that's what you want to do, run after it. And so I was nervous and scared because at, 28, 29, 30 years old, that's not traditionally when, people go to college.
Right.
So I went back to college and decided what I wanted to do, and that's how I got into political science with a concentration in politics. Graduated in the Honors College there and got accepted to New York University, where I'm finishing up now.
Wow. So I want to ask you this question. What got you, how old were you when you had your brushes with the law?
I was 18 and 24.
Okay. And what was it that gravitated you toward that?
The brushes with the law?
Yeah.
I was a rebel without a cause. I was lost.
Okay.
I didn't, I thought I, knew everything there was out there in the world. So not realizing that I really didn't know everything, it sent me in all different directions.
Right. And so just again, full disclosure, because sometimes, some of the guests that I have on the show, and my show primarily targets the urban communities within Essex County. When African Americans have brushes with the law, there are times when folks are blaming the system, they're blaming the white man, right? They're blaming something external. And I wanted to know, because you are a white man, are you
I sure am.
do you blame the white man? Do you blame the system? Do you blame something external for what you did, or do you take ownership and responsibility for that?
Me, I have to take full ownership and responsibility for it.
Okay.
There's no other person. It wasn't my mom or dad. It wasn't anybody that led me to that. It was myself. So I have to take full responsibility for that.
And then after that, what you did was you got your life together, right? But now you did have something that doesn't exist in a lot of homes in urban communities, which is your mom and dad.
Yes.
Right. So you did have, two-parent household. So now you were able to lean back on that and get guidance from them, support from them, and then go to college.
Yes, Eric, I have to tell you that is a huge reason why I am where I am right now. It's because of my mom and dad, my family and friends. If you don't have that good structure, regardless whether it's your mom and dad, someone to lean on, because there were many, many times after that where, I doubted it. I had to pull myself up from something. I threw myself in a really deep hole, and if you don't have that support system somehow, some way, it's not impossible, but it's a lot more difficult.
Okay. And so now were you born in Newark?
No, actually, my mom was born in Newark.
Your mom was born in Newark. And so you transplanted to Newark when?
I transplanted to Newark in December of 2013.
Okay. So you've been here for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So with folks who claim to have deep roots in Newark, born and raised is what you hear, right?
Yes.
Born and raised in Newark. What is it in the 4 years that you've been here that you've seen about Newark and about yourself that you believe there is a good pairing in terms of you being able to be an effective legislator here in the city of Newark?
Number one, the people. I have to say the Newarkers, especially in the block that I live on, just the most welcoming people, kindest, generous, always willing to help. And when I moved here, you hear about Newark. It's the bad things that you hear about, and it's sad because there's actually more great things that come out of Newark.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a tendency as humans to always want to concentrate on the bad. So I definitely have to say that Newark, regardless, is like I look at Newark kind of like myself. Is that I've gone through bad times and I go through good times, but at the end of the day, the core of me
Mm-hmm.
is good.
Okay. And so being here for 4 years, what have you done in Newark over those 4 years? So people have a sense of how grounded you are in the traditions or history or people and the pain.
I really have concentrated on getting to know the people in my ward.
And now what ward is that?
Central Ward.
Okay.
Over by Bergen and 16th.
Gotcha.
By the theater over there. And I've, talked to a bunch of people in the community and, no organizations.
And now why the Central Ward? Out of all the wards that you could have moved into?
I'd have to say that was by the hand of God. I mean, I'm a religious man, and it was by the grace of Him that I found the building I'm in,
Mm-hmm.
and put me there. I couldn't tell you any other reason,
Okay.
Why. And ever since I've been there, I've fallen more deeply in love with it.
Excellent. Okay, and so now there are. In as great as Newark can be, there and its people, many are. There are a lot of issues. There's a lot of pain, right? There's a great deal of struggle. There's homelessness. There's unemployment. There is crime. There is a struggle over education, and so looking at all of those things, where and how do you believe you can fit in to improve those circumstances for people?
One, my age. I'm younger. I'm 36. So I believe, in new times and how we progress and want to go in the future. We don't do business like we used to. And there's new models. You look at Google or Netflix and things like that, and their work environment. It's not the same as it used to be when your mom and dad grew up or my mom and dad grew up. So we need to be able to move forward and figure out those things and understand as leaders, we don't have all the answers, so we need to reach out to people, experts in their field, to find those answers, and the people in the community, because it's the people in the community like ourselves, Newarkers, that are on the streets that know what's best or want to play a part in that. And I don't feel that the people in Newark, and I surely don't, that your voice is heard. I've seen so many council meetings where people just get shut down while they're trying to speak, and it's like those are the people you work for. I mean, if you've got to stay there till 3 o'clock in the morning listening to people so they feel better, so they feel like they have your ear, then that's what we need to do.
Well, one of the biggest issues, and I agree with you, by the way, is engaging the community, right? Is in creating this, but there is no doubt a political system that is churning every day, that is working in direct opposition to what it is you're talking about trying to do. Because to listen to the people, to empower the people, to engage the people, means that you have to make room at the table for those people. And I'm a firm believer, and you asked me earlier, why I do this show, what got me into it. It is because I understand that dynamic, that it is important to have daily conversations, the same way you're saying, right? So I've committed to being here 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and then on my social media page, as often as I can be, having conversations with folks, giving them, informing, engaging, and empowering them to change their quality of life. Right? Don't want them to be dependent on me. I want them to know that within them lies the power to make change.
Most definitely.
And so, but how will you? Do you know what you're getting into? I mean, that's what I like. I mean, do you know what you're getting into?
The political machine here in Newark.
Well, not just the political machine, but the ugliness of politics in Newark. I mean, the intimidation, the money, the everything.
The only way it changes is by good men and women standing up to change it. I don't know fully what I'm getting involved in the dark side of this, because I really don't want to look at that. I want to concentrate on the good part of it and move towards that. I'm no fool, and so with that said, I think it's definitely going to be a difficult journey, but I think this journey taken and then won will hopefully start to bring change to Newark, so we can start to bring back leadership and belief in people. And I think that's why I like your program so much. And I was, just so appreciative that you invited me on, because I've been listening to you and just the information and the platform that you bring people. And I think that, the councilmen and women of Newark should be able to do this more often. If I get into office, I'd like to be able to do this once a month on top of other
a lot
things.
of them won't do it, though. A lot of them won't, because they don't want the light. They don't want, they want to operate in darkness. They've all been invited. I've only had one council person from Newark come on. I've had a council person from East Orange. I've had several people from Irvington come on. I had the mayor and one council person two council people from East Orange come on. The rest of them, and it's funny because I had this conversation coming in today. I said, somebody said to me, Eric, I was on your show, and then I got a call from somebody, and they said, Eric's not a guy you want to be hanging around with. That's what he said.
Really?
Yeah, man. So I said, well, you should ask him why. The gentleman who made that statement. I said, ask the gentleman who told you that why you shouldn't be hanging around me. What is wrong with me? And I said, and now if he's honest, what he's going to say is, Eric rubs people the wrong way. right?
Truth?
Eric is not, that's right, by telling the truth. Eric is not trying to crawl into political beds with people, and so you never know what's going to come. He's not predictable. The only thing that I'm predictable for is telling the truth, right? Yeah. But people wake up, and I've been told by some of the politicians, they've called me and they said, man, you know, I wake up in the morning. You want to push that red button for me, the top one? Let's take this call. Well, we're going to ask you to hold 1 second, caller. But I've been told by some politicians, they call and say, man, you know, one of the things I do when I wake up in the morning is I look at your Facebook page to see whether you put me on blast, or I tune into the radio show to see whether or not you're talking about me. But I think that's a good thing.
Oh, I think it's a great thing. I think to hold people accountable is awesome. And that's why I gave full disclosure of the two biggest elephants in the room of my felonies. And it wasn't easy, trust me. You know, but
and what have people said when they've read your website and they've seen that?
I've gotten my hand shaken more times, and just thanking me. For being honest, for allowing that transparency to come out, and knowing what it took for me to do that. It's a scary thing to bring out, you know, the
well, definitely what's needed in politics are men and women of character.
Yes.
Right, and I think that showed character because it is you.
Thank you.
But I want to ask, what are you doing now? Are you working? Are you in the private sector? Because what I want to try to find out now for the audience is, because I do try to provoke accountability, and what I always look for in folks who are running for political office is some past experience that says to me, I believe that you are qualified, you know, beyond just meeting the requirements, right, of residency and age and all that kind of stuff, but you have the qualifications to actually affect change.
I think we all have the qualifications as humans to affect change. I think one of the big qualifications is allowing other people to hold you accountable. If we don't do that, we end up in a position that a lot of cities are, allowing their elected officials to run in the dark and not speak. My qualifications, you know, I started, actually what inspired me to want to run, and I just thought about this through meditation and sitting down a couple months ago, was when my dad ran for school board down in South Florida, because he just saw the way that the schools were going, and he wanted to affect change. So he made me feel like at 14 years old that I was his campaign manager, not even realizing it. So I went to campaigns with him. You know, sometimes there'd only be 4 people there, you know, and he allowed me just to really be involved in that. And so with that, moving forward, you know, I went through my troubling times, and then went to school to find out that this is what I wanted to do. I was president of the political forum down at my state college, where we invited senators and congressmen and women to come in. I pulled in the biggest crowds that a student body has ever pulled in, or a student club has ever pulled in. I was vice president of student government. So those things started to build the foundation that I needed to understand what it takes to affect real change. And then now what I do is I go to school for political science concentration.
So you're a full-time student?
No, part-time.
Okay.
So I'm part-time student, full-time in IT. I do IT desktop support. And that pays the bills, and that's what actually pays for me to run my campaign. I'm not financed by anybody. It's all my money. I don't want special interest.
So now you know that that's going to raise some eyebrows, right? Because if people can't give you money, then that means that they can't own a piece of you, which means that you'll be independent.
Yeah, I'm non-declared. I actually love New Jersey because they give you that option. I'm so sick and tired of this two-party system where they want to hold people, slaves to something, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. And the way our voting system is, I think, is archaic. You should have multiple options to choose. One of the things I believe in is ranked choice voting, which allows you to rank your candidates in order. So if your top candidate doesn't get picked, your second one, okay, those votes go to that candidate. You can read more about that on my website.
And tell the people your website.
My website is daviddwalsh.com. That's DavidDWalsh.com.
So, David, I mean, this is going to be unconventional in terms of how politics are run, not only in Newark, but in Essex County. So, one of the things that Newark is facing, like I said, jobs, neighborhood development. You're in the Central Ward, so you see the need for, not toward the downtown area, but up into the communities, more development into those communities. Prisoner reentry programs. Folks are talking about education, I said. And even though the council and the mayor per se are separate from the Board of Education, by way of the influence that politicians have, they make endorsements, right? They fundraise, they do all kinds of things to influence the board elections. Where do you stand? And we could take them in any order, but in terms of neighborhood development, job creation, and education.
Sure, and I think the most important to me is education. And I say that is because,
Did you vote in the last school board election?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Have you been reading or at least listening to my show and my opinion about the last school board election?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, we have probably the most incompetent 3 people to be elected to a school board that I've ever seen. And they doubled down by, in my opinion, by voting to put a guy who can't read beyond a 6th grade reading level as the president of a $1 billion institution. To go further, that same ticket of candidates that ran and won, one of the candidates fraudulently ran a campaign and told voters that he had a degree that he didn't have. What are your thoughts about that? Now, I can tell you he doesn't have a degree. That is fact. I challenge Marquise to come into the show and prove to me that he can read beyond a 6th grade reading level. I've heard him read, and that's why I'm making that assertion. And then in terms of the lack of qualifications of those 3, simply because none of them have ever done anything remotely close to what's going to be required.
What would you like to see?
In terms of board members?
Yeah.
I would like to know that that somebody who's running for the Board of Education has at least read the policy handbook, right? Understands the policies. I would like to know that people, because they're going to be not only dealing with policies, they're going to be dealing with budgets, they're going to be dealing with negotiations of unions and contracts and things like that, that those people have had those experiences in their lives, right? It's much like when you apply for your job. When you go to apply for a job, your employer or your future employer, hopefully, says to you, I need to see a resume.
Which will be the people in Newark.
Right, and that's right. So they say, let me see your resume, and the reason they're perusing your resume is to see whether or not you have the requisite skill set to do the job you're getting ready to be hired to do, right?
Yes.
And then beyond that, there's a Q&A in your interview where they say, well, okay, explain to me how you're going to tackle this. I see that you did this at that job, but then how would you correlate those skills and how would you leverage them to work over there? And then you would have to explain that. And then at the end, what do? They say, can you give me some references? Because then they want to call the company that you worked for previously, or a couple of them, the people that you know, and say, hey, did David really do these things that are on his resume? And what I'm saying is none of that process occurs. So I'm never shocked when we elect these people and nothing gets done.
So let me ask you this question, Eric, if you don't mind, and your listening audience too. Why do you think these 3 won? Why do you think they were able to get the votes?
Money and political power. So it is the paradigm that I'm telling you you're going to be operating against. So when I said you're going to be running an unconventional campaign, It's because you have within the city of Newark and within Essex County, and I don't know that Essex County is different from a lot of other places, but I know Essex County. So in Essex County, you have political bosses, you have influencers in the community, right? And those influencers are extensions of the political machine. And so when the political machine gets ready to gear up, they reach into the community, they grab those influencers, they pay them, right? Those influencers then go to uninformed voters, low information voters, and they tell them, you should vote for that person. And the low information voter, because I'm an influencer and they're willing to try, I'm endorsing that candidate, right? So it's like endorsing a product. So you like me, you like them. And that's how it operates. And it's a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
And that's why they won.
I think it's and it's a low turnout.
But the low turnout is intentional, right?
Which is sad.
Yeah, but it's in. So we talk about voter suppression. I talk about this on the show often too. We talk in our community about voter suppression, but when black folks are talking about voter suppression, we're always saying that like the Republican Party or some white people are suppressing black people from voting. But I'm saying that a predominantly black city, you have black leadership suppressing black votes, right? Because they understand, again, once you broaden the tent and you invite more people in, right, and you educate those people, then you may have to share some power with those people. But they don't want to do that. See, those new people that you invite in are unpredictable. The people who are already in, you know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Right. So, so that's what I see happening, and but look.
So how do we change that? I guess is my question. We have all these formulas of why something happens, and I guess I want to look at the solutions.
But I think that people like you getting engaged, right? Folks who, somebody might look and say, well, wow, why is he running? Well, he's running to try to create change, right? You got to start somewhere.
If I don't give anything but awareness.
Listen, the Grand Canyon became the Grand Canyon. It started with a drip.
Yeah.
Right?
It's unbelievable.
It started with a drip. And so when that first drop landed on the ground, on that flat ground, because it wasn't a canyon yet, nobody could have anticipated what it was going to create. So we need to have courageous people willing to be that first drip, right? Understanding the possibilities that can be. But it's a tumultuous road ahead. No doubt. I've seen it, and it's not to discourage you; it is to prepare you. And like I say to, I think we're going to get a call in a couple minutes from Jack Ciattarelli, and I want you to stand by. But I think that the advice that I would give you is the advice that I would give anybody else. If you're going to run if you're going to run a ward race in Newark, you're probably going to need, especially Central Ward's the largest ward, right?
Because I think 25,000 votes last time.
Yeah, but you're going to need 25,000 for mayor.
25,000, 99,000.
Oh, but you're not running Central Ward. You're running at
City
large.
Council at large. It was 99,000 people voted in that with 19 candidates.
Right. And so what I would say is this, and for any of you guys who are thinking about running, I'm going to give you this too. This is like a simple formula. I'd say you're going to need somewhere, best case scenario, $80,000 per ward. So that's 5 wards, so that's $40,000, $400,000. And the reason you need it is because nobody works for free in Newark. So canvassers, right, poll workers, challengers, all those people want money. The second thing you're going to need the money for is literature. There are a lot of people get information different ways. Some people get it through texting. Some people get it through the phone. Those are robocalls. Some people get it the internet. Some people get it the old-fashioned retail politic way, right? You walk the neighborhood, shake the hand, and then you have the mailers, of course, right? So all of those things are, again, going to eat up capital, and then it's going to eat up time. I actually did this formula for somebody a couple days ago. I would say, starting now, probably need to have close to 12 people working 4 hours a day, each person being able to knock on 10 doors an hour, so that's 6 minutes per door, right? And then it's just a cumulative effect. Now, so again, when you say, well, how do these other people win? It's because they pool money together, like and they invest in a in a candidate, and then they pool the resources together, and then they have the people in the streets to be able to do that. Other than that, I would say to you, man, knock, knock, knock.
I'm gonna make my knuckles very sore.
Make it very sore, man. Now my brother won in 2010, became the Central Ward Councilman, and he won by 11 votes.
Wow.
11 votes, man. And we were out.
11 more doors.
11 more doors, man. Those nights when, everybody was tired and we were about to go home, and my older brother said, let's go down that street before we go home, or let's put up 4 more posters, or let's take down those 5 posters. Oh, and I want to ask you this question. There's an ordinance, and I would love to see this, because I think that Newark deserves better. There's an ordinance on the books that says that there should be no signage on the poles. Now, if you go to Maplewood, Milburn, South Orange, even Orange, and other communities, they respect that, right? And you drive down the streets, and other than people who have lawn signs on their lawns, you don't see the poles littered with campaign literature. I would love to see one of the things that you do as a candidate is push to get all of the other candidates to sign a pledge that says that you guys are going to be a part of keeping Newark clean.
I'm more than willing to take that on, and anybody that wants to team up with me and take that on also. I think that's awesome. I think one of the huge things that keep people down and disappointed is seeing all the trash around. If you wake up to that and walking out every day and seeing that, it just keeps you in a depressed state.
Well, that's part of the the thing for me, right? When I listen to elected officials talk about keeping the community clean, and then on election, during election cycle, they're the biggest litterers of the community, like literally.
What is the process for afterwards, the cleanup? I know that me and my dad had to go. We put in each of our own signs. I think we put in 1,500 or 2,000 signs, and we went around and picked up every single sign afterwards.
Right. So we would hope that candidates would go and clean up. Right. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. You can drive through areas in Newark and see. Posters on poles from 2 elections ago. You can see that, right? And part of it is, like I said, the culture during campaign season. There's you have what they call a put-up team and a tear-down team. So you have a team that goes and puts up your poles, your signs on poles, and then your opposition has a team that goes and tears them down. And then vice versa. They have a team that puts theirs up, and you have a team that tears theirs down. So this thing goes back and forth. If that's Jack, we're going to take this, and we'll get back to that. Hello, this is the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Hello?
Hello?
Yep, this is Eric.
Hey, Eric, this is Jack Ciattarelli.
Hey, welcome to the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the Republican gubernatorial candidate, Jack Ciattarelli, on. How are you?
Very well, and I apologize for the tardiness, Eric. The 10 o'clock interview went a little long.
No, that's okay, man. I know you're out there on the campaign trail. I've got a guy who announced that he's running for a at-large seat in Newark, and we were just talking about how how difficult it is campaigning and how much time it takes. So I appreciate you taking a little bit of time with us.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I was at the debate down in Newark, and one of the things that I noticed being in Newark with the Republican Party is I was one of 3 African. And so and the reason I'm bringing this up is my show, and I wanted you to come on because I target primarily urban communities within Essex County, right? So
I'll be in Essex tonight for my next town hall.
Oh, excellent. Where?
Up in Caldwell.
Okay, so what time? Are people invited? Is it open to the public?
To the public. We do ask people to RSVP because it has limited seating, but the doors open at 6:30 and they'll begin at 7.
Okay, so I hope that people turn out because it's important for them to be able to hear what it is that you have to say.
Right. Now, the Caldwell Community Center. So.
Okay, I'm trying to adjust my audio for you, for the people who are listening through social media. So you guys let me know if the audio is clear. Mark, I see you said that the audio was faint. I tried to adjust it a little bit. Let me know if it's clear. So anyway, I was at the debate, and I was one of 3 African Americans there. And one of the things that's...
enough, Eric.
Huh?
That's not enough.
Yeah, and so one of the things that that I always hear in our community is that, and I have Republican friends, but they say that the tent hasn't been broadened in our community to allow for more African Americans to feel like they are a part of the, of what's going on.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, when you listen to my campaign since the time that I declared last October, one thing I've said over and over again is this isn't just about me compelling Republicans to vote for Jack Ciattarelli. This is about me energizing millennials, women, minorities, people of color, because I believe that's the responsibility of the candidate.
Okay. And so what can the party do to bring more African Americans in?
Well, first thing is they have to elect the right kind of leadership. I really believe it's leadership that gets people excited about being part of a movement. And I think that, quite frankly, Jack Ciattarelli has that kind of potential. I do believe in the pig tent. We are the party of Lincoln. We're the party of ideas. We're the party of opportunity. And that's what people want to hear. That's what gets them excited.
Okay. So, so on to a couple things that are... that I'd like to be able to talk about. I'd like to be able to, firstly, in Newark, schools. Schools are huge, right? And everybody was freaking out about this flat funding proposal by the governor and how it would decimate urban schools. But there needs to be some school funding reform. What are you proposing?
Well, Eric, first, you identified the reason why I didn't support the governor's proposal, because some communities are always going to need more help than others, and not all children are equal in their educational needs. And by the way, I didn't think the governor's proposal would ever pass the muster with the Supreme Court. So I've taken what I think is a much more reasonable approach, where we're constantly evaluating how well a community is doing with regard to its revitalization efforts. And if, in fact, it is revitalizing, as Jersey City and Hoboken have, then its state aid should go down as its own ability to pay for its own schools goes up. I mean, all form of government aid, let me rephrase that, Eric, no form of government aid was ever meant to be a subsidy in perpetuity, right? I think unemployment insurance is the best example. If somebody loses their job, we'll give them unemployment. And they can get up to 26 weeks of unemployment in the hope that they find a job. If they find a job in week 10, we stop the unemployment checks in week 11. If you don't find a job, we stop the unemployment checks after 26 weeks. So no form of government aid was ever meant to be a subsidy in perpetuity. So what we need to do is constantly reevaluate whether or not a community's ability to pay for its own schools is going up through revitalization efforts and economic development. We haven't done that. The fact of the matter is, in places like Hoboken and Jersey City, we've continued to increase the state aid to their schools, despite the fact that they've experienced enormous revitalization. And this is why a $300,000 house out in Manville, New Jersey, which is a very, very blue-collar town in the suburbs, is paying more in property taxes than an $800,000 house in Jersey City. That's not fair.
No, I would say that that's not fair. So, according to the notes that I took, Newark currently pays 12% in taxes toward their. Is that correct? Right. And
said another way, for every dollar of expense in its school budget, Newark pays about 12 to 13 cents on the dollar.
Okay.
And in my community of Hillsborough, New Jersey, out here in Somerset County, we pay about 70 cents on the dollar.
Okay. And in your proposal, would Newarkers be paying more?
Yes.
Okay.
So over time, we would have places like Newark inch toward paying at least 25% of the local school budget. I think Newark has the ability, has the capacity to contribute more toward its local school budget. And every dollar that it does is one less dollar of aid I have to send there for its schools, and I will take that dollar and not give people an income tax cut. I will take that dollar and send it to a great many school districts around the state that are underfunded. So, for example, Manville, New Jersey out here, a little town that's been ravaged by the exit of industry, ravaged by flooding, very, very blue-collar town, they get $9 million less than they're supposed to. So what we need to do is try to make some of these other districts more whole, if you will.
Now, the lieutenant governor at that same debate said that she had no intention on raising taxes. Is that realistic?
I don't believe it is. And by the way, she's put forth a proposal for New Jersey to rejoin the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, otherwise known as RGGI, which advocates for a carbon tax on cap and trade that would raise all of our electrical rates. So I just find it a bit hypocritical, if not a lie, to make that kind of statement.
So, jobs in Newark. And I mean, we talk of jobs all across New Jersey, but in Newark and in surrounding urban communities, how do we stimulate things to create more job opportunities?
So what I'd like to see, quite frankly, is more cranes on the horizon in Newark, and I'd like to see luxury high-rises going up for condominiums and for rentals, but also for affordable housing. Because an economy, a local economy, will emerge where it is people live. And Newark is a very desirable place to live. Its proximity to New York, the arts, everything that's going on in Newark, sports. Newark should be a shining city on the hill in New Jersey. We've got to get people living in Newark, but that won't happen unless we're building the type of housing that people want to live in. And guess what happens when people live in a community? What happens? Laundromats, pizzeria, salon, beauty parlor, small law firm, small accounting firm, small architectural firm. All that little economy will sprout up the way you see it in downtown Princeton, downtown New Brunswick, downtown Morristown, downtown Somerville. Newark has everything it is that people are looking for today to make it a very, very desirable place to live.
And it just needs that shot in the arm. So what are the biggest differences for the listeners if they're looking at you and they're looking at the lieutenant governor and trying to figure out what the biggest differences are in what you're proposing and what she's proposing?
Well, there's a number of very big differences. I mean, I've served 2 terms at the municipal level, county level, and now 5 years in the assembly, but I've never not been in the private sector for 30 years full-time, the last 20 as a business owner. So I've actually created jobs. She has spent the majority of her professional life in government. She's an attorney. I'm an MBA, CPA, entrepreneur, and business owner. And I think the other big difference is I have a very, very specific plan. It's the kind of thing I've always given my shareholders, my customers, and my employees. I don't hear of a plan out of Lieutenant Governor. I hear of some circuit breaker that is, in my opinion, irresponsible and not entirely truthful in terms of providing property tax relief. I really think it's a failed program with a lot of holes in it. So there are a number of differences between the two of us.
So pension is a huge pension reform is huge. What are your views about how to fix it?
Well, listen, we have to deal with the reality of the fact that the post-retirement health care benefit has tripled in cost over the last 10 years, and people living into their 80s and 90s. So what am I getting at? What I'm getting at is this. We need to have all public worker retirees, current and future retirees, start to contribute toward the post-retirement health care benefit. This notion of you retiring from the state or from one of our school districts and having a pension plus Social Security that equals $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 and not having any out-of-pocket expense for the rest of your life for the post-retirement health care benefit is not sustainable. Not with people living in their 80s and 90s. So here's what I've said. All current employees in the public sector who are employed less than 10 years, you're going into a cash balance plan. All new hires are going into a 401k. All current and future retirees are going to start to contribute to their own post-retirement health care benefit. And we're going to stop allowing people to accumulate sick and vacation time to get a huge check upon retirement. It's going to become use it or lose it in New Jersey under Governor Ciattarelli.
You know, I agree with that. I agree 100%, and I talk about that all the time. Now, I was also listening to you talking about, you and the Lieutenant Governor talking about the issues with NJ Transit. I mean, huge infrastructural issues. I want you to talk about that. And then you mentioned the possibility of combining the transit, NJDOT, and motor vehicles to create a greater sense of transparency. I want to know how you think that would work, and then why would we have more transparency? And then this is another part to that question. Why not privatize?
So the first part of your question, New Jersey Transit is in crisis, and I don't want to be a candidate or a governor or a leader that just talks the talk without walking the walk. So last week I actually got on the train and rode with New Jersey Transit riders into the city and talked with them about their concerns and their anxieties and the stress levels over worrying not only if you're going to get to work on time, but whether or not you're going to get home alive. Now, I voted no on the gas tax, despite what the Lieutenant Governor might be telling people. I voted no, but the fact of the matter is the gas tax revenues are now here to stay. We have $2 billion a year to invest in infrastructure, and I think we need an immediate reprioritization of those funds. New Jersey Transit is in crisis. We need to fix New Jersey Transit now. And even if that means us doing the Amtrak rail repairs and worrying about Amtrak reimbursement later. I mean, when I was a Somerset County freeholder and it would flood in places like Bound Brook and Manville, we saved lives first and worried about reimbursement from the federal government later. So that's the first thing we need to do. Second thing is, when I look at state government, Eric, I'm a CEO, and I see this entity known as New Jersey Incorporated as a very, very dysfunctional and inefficient organization. It needs to be reorganized. And one way to do that is by taking New Jersey Transit, New Jersey DOT, and the Motor Vehicle Agency, putting them all under one roof. I think that will lend itself to greater transparency, greater accountability, and greater fiscal sustainability. Like, for example, Motor Vehicles generates $1.5 billion a year in revenue for all the fees that they collect. That goes into that black hole known as the general fund. I don't want to see that money go in the general fund anymore. I'd rather see that stay in that separate entity where NJ Transit, NJ DOT, and Motor Vehicles is, and that helps pay off transportation trust fund debt, and that helps pay for infrastructure projects. Let it be like a user tax. I mean, the tolls that you pay on the Garden State Parkway fix the Garden State Parkway. The tolls you pay on the Jersey Turnpike fix the Turnpike. That makes it more fiscally self-sustaining. We need to do the same thing with New Jersey Transit, Motor Vehicles, and DOT.
You know what? I can't remember the name of the tax now, but it's in your phone. There's a 90-cent tax
every month on every landline.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And it was originally for the 911 emergency.
It's supposed to go to 911 communication centers.
But it doesn't anymore.
And it doesn't. Just like the dollar that we collect on every can of paint that we sell that was supposed to go toward removing lead from the environment doesn't go toward that. And these are just two of many examples of these dedicated taxes that aren't being used for their intended purpose, which makes them a lie.
How do we fix it?
And we need to do one of two things, and we will under my administration. It will either be used for what it was dedicated for, or it'll be ended.
Excellent, excellent. So you're currently an assemblyman.
I am.
And on my social media post, somebody asked me to ask this question: what's the greatest accomplishment that you've had as an assemblyman?
Well, listen, I wish I could tell you that there's been great accomplishments because that's what I went there to do, all the things that I'm trying to do as governor. It's one of the reasons why I'm running for governor. The fact of the matter is that as a freshman or a sophomore in the legislature, I've just not been allowed to achieve seismic change. So I'm giving up my assembly seat after a very, very short term of only 5 years to run for governor. And I will say that what I think my greatest accomplishment is, non-policy-wise, is having all the other legislators get to know me as somebody who's driven by the policy and not by the politics. I'm not rigid in my ideology. I'm not a hyper-partisan. I'm true to my Republican principles, which I consider to be American ideals, such as self-reliance and free enterprise and small government and lower taxes. But I'm really about problem solving in the end. So I think my greatest accomplishment is my colleagues in the legislature all knowing that I'm not rigid in my ideology. I'm not a hyper-partisan. I'm somebody that's driven and motivated by problem solving, and that has made for some fantastic working relationships, which I think will be advantageous to me when I'm governor.
Okay. And now in urban communities, Planned Parenthood is a, I mean, it is a vital resource. And Governor Christie, to many in the urban community, has not been a friend to Planned Parenthood. And in fact, even the president has proposed some cuts that would, hurt Planned Parenthood. Where do you stand on that?
Well, listen, we need to make sure that all New Jerseyans have convenient access to high-quality care, because I believe health care is a right, not a privilege. So the question then comes down to how best do we do that? And so I'm all for women's health. As a cancer survivor, I'm even now for men's health. I can't tell you how many men at the clinic were being treated for prostate cancer because they were never subject to screenings. And we know when it comes to women's health, one of the primary benefits of it are all the screenings, pap smears and mammographies for breast cancer and the like. So I'm for women's health. I'm for men's health. I'm serious. I'm very, very seriously concerned about the disparities in healthcare outcomes amongst minority populations. But we only have so many discretionary funds to spend in New Jersey, and there's other priorities that continue to emerge. So women's health is a priority, men's health is a priority, healthcare disparities in minorities is a priority, homeless veterans is a priority. We don't have enough beds for all the drug addicts that are out there today, and we don't have enough mental health services for the peak demand in mental health that we have today in the community. So we need to find a way to use the limited number of funds to meet all these priorities, women's health included.
Okay. In Newark, and again, this is the biggest city in the state of New Jersey. There are two things going on. There's a struggle, not just in Newark, but across the nation. This debate about school choice. And in Newark in particular, charter, traditional public, vouchers. Where do you stand, and what would your administration be in support of?
So I've been very, very clear on this. I fought a charter in my own hometown of Hillsborough because we're a top 25 school and our cost per student is under $16,000, which means I consider it to be very reasonable. We don't need competition. I don't think people need a choice that terribly in Hillsborough for those two reasons. What I have said is this. If a school system is failing by any number of reasonable metrics, and I'd like to enumerate them for you. Number one, attendance, graduation rate, performance on standardized tests, college acceptances, and for those that aren't going to college, are they ready for careers? If a school district is failing in those areas, I do believe that parents and custodians should have a choice. And right now, the best choice is charters. Now, every time that there's a lottery for a charter in Newark, the demand exceeds the supply. And my heart breaks for all those people that don't win the lottery that are going back to what they think is what they consider to be a failed system. So charters do provide, I think, the right kind of answer in those systems that are failing. I'd like us to see us do in New Jersey with vouchers what Wisconsin and Ohio did, which is kind of experiment with a pilot program by making a limited number of vouchers available, maybe 100,000 statewide in my first year in my administration, and let's see how that goes. That's how Wisconsin and Ohio did it. Vouchers is a revolutionary and good idea. But when something's revolutionary, I also would caution us to go slow. So let's take the Wisconsin-Ohio approach on vouchers and see how it goes.
Now, also in Newark, over 20 years of state control. We're on the brink of local control. Would you, as governor, restore local control back to the city of Newark?
Without a doubt, if I'm confident in the leadership and I'm confident in the community's ability to oversee their school district, for sure. The one thing I always ask people to keep in mind is that right now Newark has about let's just deal with the round numbers because it makes it easier. Its school budget is about $1 billion a year, $1 billion. More than $700 million of that is paid for by the state. And so there are a great many people around the state that say state-funded, then state-control. I think what we have to do is evaluate it on an annual basis as to what is in the best interest of the taxpayers that are paying paying for that school district. And this gets back to what we started out with, Eric, today, that a reevaluation every year, if a community can begin to pay more toward its own school district and get off the government subsidy, and I think as Newark pays more for its own school district, it for sure should not be under state control.
All right. Well, I've been critical. I don't know if you listened to the show, but I've been critical of the last election that took place in the Board of Education and the leadership that was chosen, and I question whether or not they're competent enough. So
that's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key.
So I would love any governor who steps into Trenton to closely evaluate what just took place in this last school board election and make a determination. Because we got 30.
The current time. Splash Radio 94.3.
Can you hold for the break?
Dance hall, soca, hip hop and R&B.
Yeah, would you be able to hold until after this break?
Disco.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oldies but goodies.
Hi, this is Janet Jackson.
We're bridging the gap. Seriously. Splash Radio 94.3 New Jersey.
Mr. J represent for 94.3 FM Splash Radio. We'll splash out the music on them.
So this is the Eric Dawson Radio Show. We were on with Assemblyman and Gubernatorial candidate Jack Ciattarelli. We'll bring him back online. Hello, Assemblyman.
Hello, Eric.
Okay, got you back. Thank you. I don't have my engineer in here today, so we went to the 12 o'clock break, and I got so engrossed in the conversation with you that I didn't keep track of my broadcast.
Well, no worries. I've been enjoying it, too. I do want to circle back. I realize not having local control because of a stakeover is a very, very emotional and hotly contested issue. My job will be to come to places like Newark and explain to people, because I don't think a lot of people realize that, for example, in your $1 billion Newark budget, more than 70% of that is paid from taxpayers around the state, who I, as a governor, also have a responsibility to. So I have a responsibility to Newark residents and citizens, and I take that very seriously, and I will spend a great deal of time in Newark, but I have a responsibility to all New Jerseyans. So it's a hotly contested issue, and there's nothing I want more than for each community to have 100% control over its local government and its local school district. But when the rest of the state is paying for that school district, it does change the calculus a bit.
I agree with that too. There was another question I want to ask you. Republican, 8 years, 7.5 years, Chris Christie, poll numbers in the tank. How does a Republican win in a blue state?
Well, I will not be defined by Chris Christie or Kim Guadagno, and I feel very strongly that the only way Republicans win this November is with a new message, new messenger, and a new direction. My candidacy provides that. I'm not just saying this because Donald Trump won, but I do think, given the economic and fiscal crisis of the day, people are looking for something different, and I am different in that respect. Yes, I've served at the local, county, and now legislative level, but I've never not been full-time in the private sector, the last 20 as a business owner on Main Street. And I think what people have come to the realization that what we need today is a chief executive officer, a hands-on, roll-up-your-sleeves chief executive officer, and that's what my candidacy provides. But know this, Eric, I don't see New Jersey as a blue state when it comes to gubernatorial elections. If you take a look at the last 36 years in this state, 24 have been a Republican governor. The other 12, the 3 Democrats that served during the other 12 years, not one of those Democrats was reelected. So when it comes to gubernatorial elections, I see New Jersey as a purple state that tints red.
All right. So there are three more. I think three more things that I'd like to talk about in whatever order you want to. Your views on legalization of marijuana, sanctuary cities, and there was a third one. If I can find the third one, then we'll get to that. But legalization of marijuana and sanctuary cities. So I'd like to give you my thought about it. I think that in terms of the sanctuary cities, if folks are illegal, they're not here legally, I don't think that they should be. My biggest concern is when you have urban mayors standing up and saying that they're going to be in defiance of what the federal government wants to do, and then you have the president who is then saying, well, we're going to withhold resources from you. I'm concerned that the people in those communities are not really clear on how that will really impact them.
Well, we're in agreement, Eric. And by the way, we saw what happened just in the last 48 hours right over in England with another terrorist attack. We unfortunately live in an age of terrorism. The Western democracies are at war with terrorists, and I just think that this sanctuary city policy is the worst possible policy at the worst possible time. We should all be supporting the president and making the homeland safe, and I just don't see how this policy lends itself to homeland security. I mean, if someone is thinking about crossing the border illegally into this country, right, might they not say to themselves, where can I go? Well, maybe I'll go to New Jersey. They've got those 13 or 14 sanctuary cities up there where if I get arrested for a felony or DWI, they may not even call the federal authorities in to begin the deportation process. This is the worst possible policy at the worst possible time. And I'll tell you, the Democratic proposal in Trenton to reimburse these towns if they lose federal funding from the Trump administration for not following the law, I have two questions. One, where do we get that money because we're broke? And two, is that fair to the other 550 towns in New Jersey that they're going to be reimbursing these 15 that are sanctuary cities? In my mind, it's not fair.
And then on to marijuana. There is a difference between decriminalizing it and legalizing it. And and where do you stand? I did hear you say that I believe you said you were for decriminalization, but you want to pause on the possibility of legalizing it.
I am for decriminalization. I mean, we have 4% of the world's population in the United States, but we have 25% of the world's prison population. That's an unbelievable difference. 4% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prison population, and a lot of that's because we have people behind bars that are no threat to society, that were either dealing drugs like marijuana, or because they're drug addicts. We need to fix that. So I'm for decriminalization. The question is, what is recreational use possession? Senator Ciattarelli recently put in a bill that identified recreational use possession as 50 grams. Now, I'm not a pot smoker, but I've heard that that's an awful lot of pot. I think we need to have a great conversation and analysis in Trenton is what is recreational use possession.
But when you look at other states like Colorado and other places where they have legalized it, what is the biggest concern in legalizing it?
Well, I'll tell you what the biggest concern is for me. Do we really need another substance legalized that impairs people's abilities? And that's a rhetorical question, and before people answer it, I will remind them of this. 10,000 people a year die on our roadways because of DWIs.
Right. So, again, my personal thought is to legalize it. I would hope that, through looking at all of the information, if you were to become governor, that I might be able to invite you back on and persuade you to look at some data. Because one of the things that I look at, and a lot of people who take the position that I take, they look at alcohol And yes, they do see the number of DWIs, but nobody's moving to make alcohol illegal as a result of all of the data that's out there about drunk driving and deaths and all those other kinds of things. And so I think it's about responsibility. And if we say that government, shouldn't be, in our homes, that we at some point have to become responsible people, then it's not about taking, in my opinion, it's not about taking something away from us. It's about us being responsible or paying the penalty for not being responsible.
And Eric, I don't disagree with that argument, and it's why what I've said is, let's take a wait-and-see approach. Let's see how things go in Colorado. I mean, listen, I'm an entrepreneur, so I love being an innovator and an early adopter, but New Jersey doesn't have to be a vanguard always. Let's take a look and see how things go in Colorado with regard to outright legalization, and then make a decision 1 or 2 or 3 years down the road.
All right, and then here's my last question for you. When I listened to the last debate, and this is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it did give me pause. You were asked whether or not, if you won the primary, whether you would select the lieutenant governor to be your running mate, and your answer was no. But what got me more intrigued was when you said that you believed that she was the best lieutenant governor we've ever had. And so I didn't know, I was trying to reconcile those two things.
Eric, that was an attempt at humor. She's the only lieutenant governor we've ever had. Got it.
Okay, I just want to clear it up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, she's standing 4 feet from me, and I'm being asked a very point-blank question about her being my lieutenant governor, and the answer was no. So
you did say no. You did say no.
I said no, and it is no. I believe we need to move on from the Christie Godano era. But I tried to make it a little more lighthearted because it's hard to say that kind of answer with somebody standing 3 feet away. But I wanted to be honest.
And you were very honest. And in terms of lieutenant governors, you guys were in disagreement too about whether or not, and I don't know where I fall on this one. It's like 6 in one hand, half dozen the other. Whether or not we should have an appointed or an elected lieutenant governor.
No, the question was whether or not we should have appointed or elected attorney general.
I'm sorry, attorney general. Correct. Whether we should have an appointed or elected attorney general. And I heard both arguments, and I still don't know where I stand on it. So convince me.
Well, listen, I think that if the Attorney General lacks independence, that says more about the governor than it does about the Attorney General. Do not forget, according to our Constitution, the Attorney General is nominated by the governor, but then is vetted by the Senate. So there's a very, very democratic process in place. And I am terribly uncomfortable with the notion, if we were to elect an Attorney General, that person is going to be a Republican or a Democrat, which makes them a partisan. They're going to be going around the state asking for campaign contributions, and then possibly beholden to the county party boss system and the special interest. And by the way, if you take a look at other states like Pennsylvania that elect their attorney general, there has been corruption left and right. So this is not a panacea. I think what we have works.
And I know I told you it was the last question, but I did have one more. Guns.
Yep.
I personally believe that we should be a carry state. And why aren't we?
I do believe the pendulum has swung way too far in New Jersey with regard to infringing upon people's Second Amendment rights. I think we need to start having a more honest conversation. The fact of the matter is that if there are 100 crimes that involve a gun, 99 times out of 100, the gun has been illegally obtained and is illegally possessed. Law-abiding gun owners are not a threat or a problem in society, and we need to start having a more honest conversation about these kinds of things. We've gone way too far in New Jersey. The Second Amendment is the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment. I have voted for some gun measures, like cooling down periods in domestic violence cases. I'm not a gun owner, but at the same time, if we're going to be honest about it, the pendulum has swung way too far in terms of infringing upon people's rights. And it should not be taking 5 to 6 months to get a gun permit application approved. We had that situation in New Jersey where that poor woman was murdered by a violent ex-spouse while she was waiting month after month after month for her gun permit, which she was getting only to defend herself. And yet she was murdered on her own property by a violent ex-spouse.
Now, you said that you were the best candidate to be able to beat Phil Murphy between the two, between you and the Lieutenant Governor? Why is that?
Well, first of all, I don't have any of the Christie Guadagno baggage. I think I'm looked upon as an independent voice and an independent mind that speaks truthfully on all matters. And I just think that I'm better equipped as an MBA, CPA, and business owner, Main Street versus Wall Street, to defeat Phil Murphy. I will point out very, very plainly how he's making promises that can't be kept, and how my 5-point plan is what's in the best interest of New Jersey. I think Kim Guadagno is a handicapped candidate going in the fall because she doesn't have a plan. People want to know, what is your plan? How are you going to point New Jersey in the right direction?
Now, I don't know how much time you have, but did we go over your 5-point plan, or did we need like a huge session to be able to do that? Or can you, for the listeners, just kind of give top level?
Well, let me give it a quick top level then. We did touch upon point number 1, which is school funding, because that's what drives the property tax crisis in the state. And any gubernatorial candidate's talking about fixing property taxes without making some very, very fundamental change to the current school funding formula is either oblivious or being disingenuous with voters. The second point in my plan deals with public workers' employee benefits, and you and I talked about that, particularly with the post-retirement health care benefit and switching people into 401ks. The third point in my plan deals with a total overhaul of the tax code. Our tax code ruins our economy, punishes New Jerseyans every day, and makes the American dream all but impossible here in New Jersey. So I propose a total reform of the tax code. Point number 4 deals with downsizing state government. It's antiquated, it's outmoded, and it's bloated. And point number 5 deals with the executive branch, the governor, having a better working relationship with New Jersey's congressional delegation. Our governor should be sitting down at least 3 or 4 times a year with both U.S. senators and all 12 Congress people, Eric, to advocate for New Jersey. We are dead last in the nation when you compare the federal income taxes we send to Washington, D.C. compared to what we get back. An example of advocacy is the Gateway project. We need that new rail tunnel underneath the Hudson. Do you know what that would mean to the Newark economy? So the New Jersey economy is critically important to this region. This region's economy is critically important to the national economy, and we deserve that project funded by the federal government. And all these points, Eric, in great detail, can be looked upon if you visit my website, jack4gov.com. That's Jack, the number 4, gov.com.
Well, Mr. Ciattarelli, I appreciate you being so generous with your time. We are a small station here, but I think that we're relevant within the communities that we are. And and if you win or lose, I would still love to invite you to come back and be a part of helping provide information, needed information to our listeners. But certainly, if you make it through the primary, I would love for you between the primary and the general to consider this to be a home where you can continue to share news and information about what's going on with the election and your candidacy with our listeners.
Eric, I promise you that if I win the primary, listen, if I don't win the primary, you want me back, I'm happy to come back. If I win the primary, I promise you I will be back. Your station is very, very relevant and important in the community. And listen, let's do this next time in person.
I look forward to it.
I'll come to the studio.
I look forward to it. Happy and healthy campaigning.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
We'll be right back after this break. Oh, that was a wrong one, but that's okay. We're just going to keep going. So are you on?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what'd you think?
I thought it was interesting. I think he makes some decent points, but I think he's got a long road ahead of him.
Yeah. I do too. I think that the stench of a Chris Christie utter failure is what will impede the Republicans' progress. And like I said, when I looked and saw you're in the heart of Newark, you're right downtown Newark at the Gateway Building, and I'm one of 3 African Americans sitting there in the audience.
That
spoke volumes.
That's got to change.
But anyway,
how would you feel if he picked a lieutenant governor that was independent or Democrat? Something that's unprecedented, something that has never happened.
I think that it would be unconventional. It would knock me on my heels. It would give me pause, right? I'd be talking about him. I mean, so it would create some buzz for sure. right? I would have to look and see the legitimacy of who that person was at the end of the day, and to make sure that it wasn't just some gimmick. But it would be a first, and you know, I mean, we'd be talking about it for sure.
I think those are some of the things that, you know, I think about, and the people that I talk with, you know, speak about, you know, is holding each other accountable, and one of the ways is that is not always being, you know, in your party, you know, being outside of your party, talking to different people with different opinions and different thinking.
So, no, I agree. So listen, Stephanie, and I'm glad you stayed. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So Stephanie Gully asked a question on social media. She says, when it comes to the district you're asking to represent, but you're talking about the entire city in this particular case, what would you do to improve it, and what do you think are the top priorities? Well, that's important. What do you think the top priorities are?
What I would do to improve it, one of the things that I'd like to implement is there's a town in Idaho, it's called Amon, and what they started to do is started to lay their own fiber lines for internet. Because, you know, big companies like Verizon or, you know, Comcast, Optimum, things like that, only lay lines where there's going to be money to be made. And they wanted to lay these lines not only because it was cheaper for them to lay it, but it also made the opportunity for, you know, citizens of the city to be able to change ISPs within seconds online, which creates competition. I think that would be an unbelievable thing for Newark, and also laying those lines then allows it to spread throughout the city, and we don't have any reason not to lay it somewhere. There's no reason not to bring it to that area, like what happens now. And also what it does is it allows for homes that might not be able to have internet. You know, their opportunity right now allows an hour and a half free a month, so at least if you have children, they could get on to do homework or job searching. I think it should become a utility now instead of what it is. It's becoming such a necessity, and the numbers show that it would generate a lot of revenue for the city at no extra expense to the taxpayer of Newark.
Okay. What else was I going to ask you regarding your candidacy? I got thrown off by Jack calling in. Listen, man. Oh, I know where we were. We were on education before he called in. And I was saying to you that although as a council person, you won't be, I don't want to use the word responsible for, but the 2 Cedar Street is north of 920 Broad Street. And it's its own entity, its own budget, its own everything. But the elected officials, they weigh in heavily on what goes on in the educational system in Newark. Where do you stand? You heard me ask the assemblyman where he stood on both local control and on school choice. Where do you stand on those issues?
I believe local control is very important because who knows how to best balance your checkbook except you, a stranger.
Well, but the state took over the school system in 1995 because they didn't know how to balance it.
Well, and you know, hopefully that, you know, we can get in there to do that. I think it's very important that, you know, Newark is getting local control back, and even more important now that, you know, council.
Does it matter who's in charge when local control is restored?
Oh, I think it's very important.
So would it be, you know? So what I did appreciate about what Mr. Ciattarelli said was this: we need to evaluate leadership. So along with, you know, meeting the other requirements, you know, the budgetary requirements and the you know, and whatever other qualifications or things that they needed to meet, that they met that, what is it, QSAC, right? That 5-point thing. Along with that, you have to evaluate the leadership. You have to evaluate the people who are in charge, because they're the ones who are going to be implementing.
Yeah, and you've got to get and they're voted in. You know, so you've. I mean, how do you? It's really
well, but you know. So I mean, my take on the electorate. We talked about this too, though, right? You said so. You said they're voted in. Yes, but they're voted in how? Look at the system under which they're voted in. They're voted in under a system of voter suppression, where party rules and money rules and information is not freely disseminated throughout the community. I mean, there are easy ways. I'll give you an example. I continue to talk about this on the show, that the Board of Education, for all of their whining and complaining about the fact that there's no engagement, one of the simple things they can do, and we're talking technology, just like you and I are streaming Facebook Live, doesn't cost a dime to broadcast. Right? They could broadcast live every one of the Board of Education meetings.
Yeah.
And instantly start to build a community around the issues that are being discussed.
And allow people in their homes to Skype in and ask questions.
That's absolutely right. But they don't.
We don't leverage that, and that's partly because we have older people in office. Nothing wrong with that, but we need new ideas.
We do, but there are new people. The folks who got elected to the board are younger than you, and they had their first board meeting yesterday, and there was no new technology. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, I look at it and I say they have no interest in engaging the people.
Well, and that's sad.
And so when I look at the fact that, they were duly elected, but when I look at who elected them, I say that the majority of those people are self-interest people. They either work for the city, they have family members that work for the city or work for the county, or they have family members that work for the county, or they have contracts with the city or county, or they have family members that have contracts with the city or county. And so because of that, and then understand, you're only talking less than 4,000 people.
So one of the huge things that I'm advocating for is called ranked choice voting, which would actually fix all of that. You can go to fairvote, I believe it's .com or .org, to find out more information. You can go to my website, daviddwalsh.com, which explains all of that. And what ranked choice voting does, it takes away all of...
Does it take away line A? Do you know what I mean? Like, so a friend of mine who's down in Maryland now, he said, listen, we don't have line A voting. All the people who are running, they're listed on the ballot in alphabetical order. So you actually have to go and find the candidate that you want to vote for. But here we have in New Jersey, we have line A. So, but again, this is part of the push to misinform.
Yes.
To an uninformed electorate. And you say you don't need to know who the candidate is. You don't even need to know what they stand for. All you need to know is what they're on line A.
And it does. Ranked choice voting takes that away. Actually, what ranked choice voting does, it allows you to have more than one choice. That's why it's called ranked choice voting. You rank your choices in order. So
I would be able to vote for, so if you were running at large, I could vote for you, and I could vote for two other at-large people?
Let's take it large back in 2014. You have 19 people. You rank those people in order from 1 to 19. Okay, and what happens is you have to get 51 plus 1%. Okay, to be able to win. If nobody gets it, the last person gets knocked out. Those votes get retallied. They go to your second choice, and then they get added up again until someone gets 51 plus 1%. So you have a lot more stake in the game. You have a lot more choice. It might not be your first choice.
Now, where's ranked? What is it called again?
Ranked choice voting.
Where is ranked choice voting working now?
Maine. It works in Maine, I believe Vermont.
Now, what's required to change it?
New Jersey actually has already accepted it into law, and now it just takes us as a city and a county to bring it in. We just have to bring the machines in. I actually have someone on my team that is an unbelievably talented man, and he is the one that has spoken to me about it. And when he told me about it, I thought it was incredible. I'm like, why shouldn't people have choices? Why, most people don't want to go because they feel like their vote doesn't count. One vote. This gives you multiple choices. So yeah, you might not get your first or second in, but at least you still have stake in the game. You get your third in. All we have to do is accept it and bring it in. And a lot of people don't want to bring it in because what does it do? It takes out the mudslinging. Now you have to actually have your ideas, your plans in place. And who wants to do that except a few couple people? And that's why I don't not only have ideas, but I have solutions for those ideas. I just don't want to sit here and tell you, I want to do this, this, and this. This is how I'm going to do this, this, and this. And it's laid out on my website.
Okay, so let's for the people who haven't gone to your website yet, let's go into some of the things that you're going to do and how you're going to do them.
So one of the things that I'm going to do is called a program called Jumpstart. It worked really well in Baltimore, and what it does, it takes non-violent convicted felons and drug addicts, okay, and it brings them into an apprenticeship program, all right, and it allows them to, get a 4-year apprenticeship, nationally recognized. It teaches them how job skills and how to keep that job. And then you have to mentor. Once you get through the program, you have to mentor to other men and women. It has an 80% success rate in Baltimore. So it is an unbelievable program.
And what is required to bring it here and implement it? Because it has to go from the idea stage, right, to being something that's actually happening, and then there's an implementation so that it's sustainable. How do we do that?
Well, I've been in talks with them, and it's to bring that idea here. And one of the ways you bring that is obviously bringing it to the people, and then implementing it on a small scale and start to expand it. We look at how Baltimore does it. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel if it works. I believe in looking at it and go, okay, how can I take that model in Baltimore and implement that in Newark to be just as successful? One thing that I think us as Americans don't do well, all right, is when another country does something well, we look at that and go, okay, let's bring that over, but then change it. Right. But other countries look at America and go, man, they do that well, let's implement that here. Right. And that's something that I want to do. That's something how I want to implement it. And one of the ways to sustain that is making a policy that makes new permits that are getting issued. You have to take a percentage of these workforce people on your job. Okay, and then that sustains Jumpstart.
Now, Barbara, who's listening online, she says, my son David, an architect, mentors underprivileged high school students at Rutgers, New Jersey. It's a program of New Jersey Institute of Technology. So I guess they have something like that already. So would it be possible then, if it's already working here in New Jersey at the at NJIT, to be able to go and discuss with them and share best practices on how to implement it?
Listen, my mom and dad taught me 2 minds are better than 1, 4 minds are better than 3. I believe definitely. I believe the more minds you bring into something, the better it's going to be, and the stronger of a foundation it's going to be, the longer it's going to last. If you build a house on sand, you're not going to expect the walls to stand up long. That's why we build houses on firm concrete foundations.
Now, you're going to look to run by you said independent, you're raising your own money, you're spending your own money. Are you going to continue an unconventional campaign, meaning that you're going to run by yourself, or are you going to look to partner and create a ticket of candidates to run?
Right now I'm by myself. I would love to create a ticket of candidates to run. I think you're stronger as a group than you are as an individual. Obviously, more ideas come together. If they are in line with what Newarkers want, and they are true to their word, and what they have gone through in life, and where they are is allows them to be able to do a successful job if elected, then most definitely. I look at these things like you were saying earlier with the details. You want to look at the details. So I definitely agree with if there are other people out there that would like to run with me and have the same ideas, I'm all for it.
Now, where do you stand on, and even though you be a legislator in Newark, the idea, once again, is local politicians support state politicians who then support folks who work on a federal level, but in terms of New Jersey and state politics and where things have been going with tough gun laws, where do you stand on the gun laws?
I think an individual has a right to bear arms. I think that is definitely something that has been proven to keep us safe, and is our Second Amendment. So I believe that if we do allow you to carry in New Jersey, I believe in stricter background checks. There is no reason that, if you're going to allow somebody to carry a deadly weapon legally, you want to make sure that person has, the best and capable mind possible, and is fit to carry a weapon.
All right. So now, unless there's something else that you want to say, I mean, we got about a half an hour, and there are a couple things that I posted on my page, some controversial stuff that I want to just kind of go through with the audience about, and you're welcome to stay here and do that, but I want to make sure you give your website one more time.
Sure, my website is daviddwalsh.com. That's DAVIDDWALSH.com. And I just want to thank you, Eric, and your listeners for allowing me the time to come out here and voice my ideas and concerns and how I can best help Newark.
Oh, absolutely, man. Not a problem. And you're welcome to come back anytime. I mean, the campaign is going to be a year-long campaign from about now, right, until 2018.
And when I do become a councilman, I want to be able to come out, once a month or something, and
I would love to do that. I think that is the ultimate goal. But again, it's going to require principled politicians, right? Because things are not going to always be going right, and you're going to have to be willing to come and sit and talk about it. Yep. But what they want to do is cower and hide.
And that's why one of the reasons I'm so open up right away is to let people know I'm here to earn your vote. I just don't want you to give it to me because you know me as a friend, and you've known me for 30 years, or I'm a family member, or this and that. I'm here to earn your vote, and I want to let you know that I'm here to stay for longevity. I'm here to do what's right. I have a vested interest in Newark.
Now, did we talk about sanctuary cities though?
No.
What are your thoughts about that?
My thoughts on sanctuary cities is that I don't believe we should be wasting local dollars on police officers going out and knocking down doors to find out whether or not you have your papers or not. I think federally, if you've been arrested for some other reason and you're in jail and the federal government asks us to hold you, then okay, we need to follow federal law. So that's where I stand on that.
Okay. So I want to ask you this question, and this is a plug for my sponsor, the water. What you think about the water?
Oh man, listen, it quenched my thirst.
Are you like an alkaline water drinker?
No, actually, I usually drink spring. I forget the Colorado
Spring.
Poland Springs, yeah. But
so I was told by an attorney that I should simply say that antioxidant. The antioxidant water contains more alkaline than Poland Spring, that I shouldn't bash Poland Spring. I was bashing it before. But I was turned on to it, and then they became a sponsor of the show because people were explaining to me the acidity in your body and how you need to, much like you do a pool, when you have to put the chemicals in the pool adjust the pH. Mm-hmm. Right. The same thing with your body. It's got high alkalinity, coffee and other kinds of things do that, and then you balance it by the not alkalinity, the acidity, and you balance it with the alkaline water.
Oh wow.
And then I didn't know this, but that's 9.5. And a doctor was saying you don't always need 9.5. You need to balance your pH. And then once you balance it, so you don't necessarily need to drink it every day. You may need to drink it every other day. You may, have the 9.5. You may also have some 7. Because there is some alkaline water that's 7. He said, but it's about finding out where your balance is and doing that.
Wow, I like the coconut water. I think it's got more electrolytes, I believe, in it. So it's an acquired taste, but it definitely quenches my thirst. This is excellent. I like that.
Yeah. So that's my plug to my to my sponsor. So there are a couple things that I posted on my page, man, and I want to get your thoughts about it. And this one got a lot. It said, should parents charge adult children for rent?
So it depends on when you think your child's an adult.
Uh-oh.
So is your child an adult at 8 years old child at 25? Are they prepared? Have you prepared them for the world? I believe yes. Maybe if you charge them rent and put it in the savings account and save it, so when they finally move out on their wedding day, or whatever, on their college graduation or something like that, boom, you can share it to them. I believe that. I think it's a great idea.
That's what I'd say. The majority of people in the thread said that there were a few people, however, who said that they would never charge them. They said that they would be there to take care of them forever if that's what they needed. They're there to support them as parents. And I mean, it's
what does that teach them, though? It teaches them that if they fall, there's always a safety net.
Well, I mean, should we not provide that for our children? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking the question.
I definitely think we should provide that for our children. But
call number 973-457-8000 if you want to weigh in on whether or not you believe that we should be charging our adult children rent.
And that's why I said, what age do you consider your child an adult?
I mean, I don't know. So let's say you got a 40-year-old who's living at home.
Rent.
Double rent.
Yeah.
But I mean, you do have that in some cases. You got 35, 40-year-olds living at home. You got mom still cooking dinner and, and food for them, washing laundry.
That. My mom cooks great. I wish I was.
Now, if you had to move back home, would they charge you rent?
Oh, yes. They surely would.
See, so, okay. And then the second one is, should adult children be allowed to have sex in their parents' home?
Yeah, I think that's that's just that's just personal preference, but I think that's an interesting one. Would are you okay?
No, I don't think they should be. Now that one I'll answer. The adult, the child adult thing, I'm mixed on it. I think, and you raised some interesting points. If it depends on why your child is there. If you've raised your child to be the best that they can be, right? You've been a responsible parent. You've raised them. You've given them all tools that you can give them. And the world, which is a cruel world, has created obstacles that they have not yet been able to overcome. The question is, do you bring them back to the nest, allow them to regroup, and go back out fully armed?
Yeah, I think.
Right? Do you see what I'm saying? Or if you bring them back home and you take money from them, then in some respects you're disarming them from being able to go back out there. So do you now? I like the ideas that people have where they said, maybe you take the money and you put it in an account. Well, I mean, I think that just tell the kid to put the money in the account. Right, so because it teaches discipline. Is he a good
saver?
Well, but it teaches discipline, right? So because what you're trying to do is prepare them for going back out. So I would bring you back into the house under certain conditions, and I might say to you, hey, listen, I'm going to need you to save, and so it's not about paying rent, right? It's about saving. Right, so call it what it is. I mean, if they're adults, why try to trick them? It's savings. So what I'm going to require from you, since you no longer have an electric bill, a gas bill, you no longer have rent, you no longer have a water bill to pay, I'm going to require now that you take 35% of your income and deposit it into an account.
Okay, so say that they do that. Are you going to check to make
Absolutely.
Sure?
That I
so
would
what
do.
Are the consequences?
Because we're partners now.
Yes.
Right. So as partners, and we're partners, just like if you're married, right? You're a business partner as well as a lover to your spouse. You now are a business partner as well as a parent with your child. And so from a business partner perspective, you're saying, listen, part of this arrangement, this contract that I'm entering in with you requires this. And yes, I need to check it. And now, if you violate the contract, here are the consequences.
I think that's the great idea. The age.
But I think the idea of, so I think maybe rent got to people. But there were some people in the thread who said, yeah, they should contribute to some of the household stuff. I don't think so. I think if you're an adult and you're a parent, now the world may have kicked sand in your eyes too, right? Where you need money, but don't let your child moving back and you charging them rent be the excuse, right? Just say you need money.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, if I needed money and I had kids who I believed could help me out, I would go to them and I would say, hey, listen, Dad's, facing some hard times right now, and I'm trying to cobble some money together to take care of some things. Can you help me out? I wouldn't charge you rent. I wouldn't collect money from you to take care of my things under the auspices of trying to teach you some responsibility.
But I think it's hard for people to ask for help. Especially I'm sure as a parent, to go to your child to ask for help. I think you have to get over that step. Listen, I learned that it's hard to ask for help, but it builds character.
Well, yeah. All I'm saying is that I when you talk about having if you have a relationship, a real relationship, an honest relationship with your child, I think that deceiving them, by inviting them to come back, but you really need them to come back because you need money, but you say that you're teaching them how to be more adult.
Yeah, I think it's hard to it's such a huge issue to unpack. I think there's so many different scenarios in each one, and to generalize it makes it difficult. Maybe rent wasn't the right word. Maybe savings was the right word.
Right.
And I think that's what the issue is that we don't always choose the right words. And then it sparks this huge But
the word sex was the right word, and no, they shouldn't be having sex in your house. I agree with because that. I think that there are still boundaries.
Yeah, they're huge boundaries. You're still the parent, and it's still the child, and that's something intimate and personal. And if you're back at home, obviously because you're having issues, you should be putting your energy.
You shouldn't be expending energy on that other stuff. You should be figuring out how to get out. I agree. And maybe if the parent doesn't make it so comfortable for the child, right, to be able to now shack up in their home, the child, if they have that urge to want to have sex, well, and you're not, nobody's asking you to abstain. You just have to go and figure out where to go. You have to go someplace else.
Not your mommy and daddy's
house. Not your mommy and daddy's house. If you're renting a hotel room to do it, right, that money should also be going into a savings account.
Don't let me know.
Renting a hotel room, right? Then you're not being responsible, and the contract is void.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is, I wouldn't allow it. I know my parents wouldn't allow it. I think it's coddling them, and it's just an intimate thing for two people.
Now, you're only child?
No, I have 5 brothers and sisters.
Oh, 5 brothers and 5 sisters?
No, I'm sorry, 5 total. Oh. Not 10.
Whoa. Okay, yeah. And so where do you rank in the so you're one of 6?
No, I'm one of 5.
Oh, okay, so 5 total.
I'm the confused middle child.
Are you legitimately right there in the middle?
I'm number 3.
Ooh.
Yeah, 2 older sisters, a younger sister, and a younger brother. So I'm confused.
Oh man, so you got 3 sisters.
Yeah. Oh yes, I love them all. I think they're awesome. It was tough for many years because there was so much estrogen in the house, and they would wonder why I would want to, wrestle or, body slam or jump off of things and stuff like that. But I definitely wouldn't change it for the world.
There was so I have 4. I have 3 girls and a boy.
Wow.
My son is the youngest, though. And when I had him, I didn't have him. When my ex-wife had him, we actually got into an argument. Well, not an argument, but if you asked her, she would say she was hurt in the beginning because the doctor, we didn't know what we were having. I didn't know what I was having with all 3 of my girls. Just, they just came.
Surprises.
But by the time we got to Julian, we had accumulated so many clothes because we had passed them down, right? Because each girl got the next, clothes if they weren't too worn out. But I said, you know what? If we're not going to have a girl, I want to get rid of all these clothes.
Yeah.
So we went to the doctor, and doctor said it was a boy. And the look on my face, right? It wasn't a look of disappointment. It was a look of fear. It was just straight fear, man. And I think that my ex-wife misunderstood the look. And, I guess, when you're pregnant and you got all that emotional stuff going on with you, you're, whatever. And so we talked about it, and I said, I kind of get the girl thing. I'm concerned about the boy because I was a boy. Right? And it's just different.
Much different.
Much different. So there was a book that the owner of the company I worked for bought for me, which was an amazing book, and I recommend it to anybody who has a boy. And you made me think of it when you said people were wondering why you want to jump off of things. And it's a book called The Wonder of Boys.
Really?
And what it explained, David, and it put me at ease, is that innately, it's exactly what we want to do. We want to break things, we want to throw things, we want to climb on things, and we want to jump off of things. We want to hit for no apparent reason, right? And sometimes we want to be hit, right? For no apparent reason to punch me. But as you read the book, if you believe in evolution, you realize that all of the things that you do, jumping, running, throwing, they were all things that were done to train you to hunt, right, to fight and defend, right? And so what I tried to do was provide a safe place for Julian to do those things. So didn't tell him don't do them. You want to climb here, go outside and climb here. You want to throw, don't throw in the house, but you can go outside. Here's a pile of rocks. You can throw all of them at that tree if you want to. You know what I mean? So we started doing things like that. But understanding why boys do what they do will ease the anxiety of a lot of women.
Yeah, I think so, and I think also it would help in the educational foundation to understand that. I think one of the things
within the schools.
Yes, one of the things I don't think we should have, and we really need to relook at is no offense to officers, but having officers in schools. If you have officers in schools, you need to have trained officers that are trained for children. I mean, when you're talking about adolescents and you're talking about teenagers, I went through emotions that I didn't even realize I was going through. And an officer, and my grandfather was an officer.
But you don't need them in. And I saw that on your page. I want to talk about it for a second. Sure. But you don't need officers like you have St. Benedict's, which is an all boys school, right? You have other all boys schools, and they don't have officers in those schools.
So then, why do we have them in other schools? I don't think.
Well,
that's right.
in urban schools in particular, there's there are issues, but not just issues with boys. There are issues with girls. There are disciplinary issues, and I don't think that they're dealing with the outcome of something that occurred, right? So whatever it is, trauma. Whether that kid, right, whatever trauma that child has experienced, they are, we see the end result of it in the school a lot of times. And then what we have to meet it is that officer, right, as opposed to a guidance counselor, as opposed to a social worker, as opposed to somebody else that might be able to help it. And that so that's a whole discussion that we have times here where we're talking about the school to prison pipeline and what kinds of things attribute to that. I don't know if you'll listen to the episode we did. Now, it wasn't a police officer, but in a charter school in Newark, there was a kid who brought a knife to school, and the administration found out. He wasn't, by all accounts, wasn't rude. He was asked to surrender the knife. He did, and then he was suspended for 45 days.
Oof.
So
there goes another issue.
Right. So there's a whole nother issue. But, so whether you're talking about militarizing schools with officers, or you're talking about teachers who are not, or administrations who are not in tune with the culture that surrounds the building that they're operating in, it can create additional hurdles for kids. I mean, they're coming to school, and a lot of them are, they're just damaged.
Yeah, and I was reading an article the other day that was actually really good. It was a professor out of Harvard, and they did a conference over at Rutgers in Newark, and it was about how schools are failing children by not understanding that kids are coming to school with trauma, and how to deal with trauma. Why did, that gentleman bring that knife to school? There was an obvious reason.
He said why he did.
What was the reason?
He said because he was afraid, because there are no safe passages going to and coming from school. And, you're concerned about, being shot, being mugged, being beaten up. And he felt that since the community, isn't policing itself, isn't taking care of itself and providing these safe areas for him to walk, he took matters into his own hand.
So my question.
Can you fault him?
No, absolutely not.
Because what do? We tell him we want you to go to school.
I'm feeling unsafe. I'm going to protect myself.
Right. You say we want you to go to school. He says, okay, I'm going to go.
But why suspend him for 45 days? How does that help? Like, I understand you have to punish, but why not an in-school suspension? He can still learn.
Well, that is, you're 100% correct, and that's one of the things. But part of it is so there are a couple things. If you are an administration who doesn't understand and can't empathize, right, or sympathize with the reason why, then you just kind of come hard at them. You know what I mean? But if you're sitting and you're listening, and the kid says, well, I really want to be in school. I really want to learn, but I don't want to get beat up.
I mean, the first thing that came to mind when you said that to me is, okay, what was the reason that he felt he needed to carry a knife? There's some reason behind that, and that's the reason that you need to attack. Okay, yes, you need to look and say, okay, you can't, this isn't acceptable here, but we also need to make it so it is acceptable for him to be able to feel safe walking to school.
That's right.
So that's another issue that you have to unpack, and I think schools are under tremendous stress. But that's because us as leaders aren't giving them what they need as schools. And the top priority for me is our youth, because one day they're going to be our leaders, and I want them to be the most educated, that are able to be better leaders.
Well, listen, David, man, and I'll tell you guys, nobody should ever prejudge. Right, because when I saw the your website on Facebook, the way I saw it is somebody shared it and said, "Is this a joke?"
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
You saw that, right?
Yeah.
And so I looked at it and I read it. I'm like, no, it's not a joke. This guy is running. He's a real guy and he's running. And I saw some of the other comments, but I would have loved for some of those folks who had those comments to call in, because I'm sure if they listen to this now, they'll realize, like, no, you see some things in you see some things in the community, and you see a way to be able to take what you have inside of you and apply it to improve the community. And I will tell you this, I'm going to dig more into you. Like I said, I'm going to invite you back on. I'm going to follow you.
Love that.
I'm going to be honest, throughout the whole process. But the one thing that I can tell you that I am most impressed about right now is that you are independent, that you don't have a government job. You're not relying on a government job. You have an education, and you can go out into the private sector and you can earn a living. Because what that says to me is that folks can't come and lean on you and pressure you. Do you know what I'm saying? And when you look around and you look at all of the elected officials, they all work in government.
Yeah, and
like down at 920 Broad Street. They're all in government.
See, and that's my issue, and that's why we have the issues that we have. I think, and that's what I'm hoping to change, and that's what I'm hoping to bring in. And the biggest thing I think for me is just for people like yourself to hold me accountable, and allow you to hold me accountable. I want people, when I look out my office door, I want to see all my replacements. I want people that are smarter than me, and I want that because they're going to hold me accountable, and they're going to be like me where, when I see something that's wrong or something that doesn't feel right, I step up to my boss and say it. Now, I don't always say it in the right way. I'm not always that articulate, and that's something that I need to work on. But I always challenge, and I want people around me that challenge me.
Wow. All right. Well, listen, David, I look forward to watching you run.
Thank you.
And bringing you back on. And I'm most interested in debate season. I think that's going to be a blast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
This is Eric, and I'm out.
This has been the Eric Dawson Radio Show.
It's not just about Eric's opinion. It's about understanding what's really going on.
Tune in Monday through Friday, 10 o'clock a.m.
Just continuing to talk about what elected leadership isn't doing without talking about the people who elected the elected leadership and what they're not doing to hold them accountable and or replace them. I think that I'd be doing you a disservice.
Right here on 94.3 FM. Splash Radio.
Yes, y'all, and you don't stop.
Scan them SPICE, say my name, that's me. Your girl Spice represent the Splash Radio, 94.3 FM.
Splash Radio. It's 94.3. Reggae. Dance hall. Soca.